CIST 1510, Chapter 4 is Designing Web Pages with CSS. In this chapter, we're going to look at separating design from content and why it is important. We're going to describe what cascading style sheets are. We'll define inline, embedded, and external styles sheets and their order of precedence. We'll look at the CSS rule and its syntax of how it's laid out. Look at the difference between a selector, the property, and the value. You're going to create styles that use text and color properties. Once again, we'll look at the difference between inline and block content. Describe the use of the CSS box model to apply margins, paddings, and borders. You're also going to create an external style sheet and link this to an HTML page. We'll also look at getting started in this video with your lab for Chapter 4. Some other objectives are creating a responsive images using float and clear properties. We'll create and style ID and class attributes, use a span element, and also add comments to external style sheets and to validate our CSS file. We use the style sheets to add style, colors, different types of formatting to different sections to our web page. So we want a well-designed website. And this is something that's going to grab your audience attention. It's something to bring their visual looks to your website so it's more attractive, more appealing. So this is things where we can format the font styles, font colors, the spacing, white space, background colors, images. And the CSS, the cascading style sheets, that's a language used to describe formatting of a document that's written in a markup language such as HTML5. So it is going to format the web page, determine the format. So inside this chapter, it's enhancing a website with CSS. So you're going to apply styles to the HTML5 elements on each page. The roadmap to creating a CSS file is to create the CSS file, link the HTML pages to that file, create the style rules, add comments to the CSS file, and then validate the file. Okay, when we talk about adding rules, the style rules, that's going to define the appearance of an element on a web page. So you think of a style sheet as the set of the rules for your web page. It provides a means to separate style from content, gives you the flexibility to redesign or rebrand a website. This is something that is important to use a style sheet when using a large website. It gives you the ability to easily give your site a cohesive look. So when we look at inline styles, these are styles that are written inside of the tag. Okay, so they're added to the start of a tag. We'll see here we got the example is an H1. Let me blow this up here. So we got an H1 tag. So inside the H1 tag, we're going to say we're going to add a style. So it's going to start, your inline style is going to start with the word style and the equal sign. Then we're going to put our style rule and the declaration in quotation. So in here we've got font color is set to navy. Special note is the text that will be placed in the H1 tags. Okay, so that's also going to be the font, the words that are changed to this font color. And then we close it with our H1 tag. So from what we've been doing, the only thing difference is adding the inline style. And embedded instead sheets goes into the head section of your web page. Okay, this is also called an internal style sheet. So we're going into our head tag, and we have our starting style tag that will go inside of the head. Then we set our rules. In this case, they're set in the body the background color is set to green, and then enclose the style. So going back to looking at the inline style, this style will only apply to this one instance of the H1 tag. If I have another H1 tag directly under this, it will not be applied to that unless I put another inline style. An embedded style sheet is going to apply to every tag, every time that tag appears on that one page. So in the example here, we got the bodies set to the background color of green. Everything's going to be inside that body tag is going to have the background color of green. If we going to the previous example, if we set the H1 tag into the heading section in the same styles that we have, or the same format we have the style rule of the body set. So if we set a H1 and we said the font color is navy, that means every time the H1 tag is used on that web page, that style is going to be applied to that tag, to the text that's in that tag, but only on that one web page. So if we want this applied to the entire site or more than one page in the website, okay, we can create an external style sheet. This CSS file that contains all of the styles, and it says it can be applied more than one page in a web page, a website. You would need to link the cascading style sheet, the external style sheet, to the HTML files that it's going to be applied to. To create a style sheet, you're going to create a text file and you're going to name it with a .css extension. And then once again, you'll need to make sure that you link this in the head section. So we see here the way it will look when we put our decorations in an external style sheet. So we've got the body set for the background color green. This is going to be applied now to all of the pages that we associate the CSS style sheet to, where the embedded only is applied to that one page. One of the advantages of using an external style sheet is that if we need to change that background color from green to blue, and we have the background color of green set on multiple pages, we can just make this change here and it updates everywhere that this CSS page file is located or is attached to. Now our style sheets also cascade. They have a precedence on this. So when you go through this, each type of style has a specific level of priority in the relationship to the others. The properties can be inherited from a parent through a principle called inheritance. If a selector has more than one CS rule, how specific it is determines which CS rules to apply. So when we look at CSS basics, so your CSS is going to be broken down into two sections here. You'll have a selector and then the declaration. And we'll further break these down later. But the selector in this one is the body. So we're saying this is what we're going to apply this to, is the body. And inside of that body that we've selected, we're going to declare that the background color is going to be green. So as I said, the selector is the part of the statement that identifies what to style. Okay, this can be any HTML5 element. This will be your body, your navigation, your nav, your header, your main, footer. These can be divs to set up. Okay, may also be a value of an ID or class attribute, and we'll cover those in a while. The declaration defines the exact formatting of the style. So in here, it's going to consist of the property and a value. It's going to be separated by a colon and followed by a semicolon. So we have our value, our property. All right, so we got the declaration that includes a related value that identifies a particular property value to apply. The property identifies a style, quality, or characteristics applied, maybe the color, background color, text indent, border width, font style. There's a whole lot of other options that you have here as well. So we'll look at this breaking it down. So in this case, we have body as the selector. Then we're going to have our opening brace. And inside of the declaration, we're going to break this down. The property, in this case, is the background color. We have our colon, the value, close it with a semicolon, and then use our closing brace. Now, you can have more than one property or more than one declaration in a selector. So I can set the background color, say I want to set the text color to blue, or a font, I can choose a different font. So I can have more than one declaration inside of each selector. You can also set this up to have a fallback value. This is something that you can use in case your, say your font is not installed on that computer that is being used to view your web page. So you can have different font families. You can also set it up to the measurements. So it can measure in pixels, different units, points, keywords, and percentages. So we look at the text properties here. The unit EM, it's relative to the default font size of the element. This is something that's recommended by W3C. So in that case, the sizes are relative to the browser's default font size. Percentage is relative to the default font size of the element. It is also recommended by W3C to use this. PX is the number of pixels. It's going to depend on the screen resolution. PT is number of points. It's used for printing web pages. Unit keyword, it's relative to a limited range of sizes. For example, the font size is, in this case, extra, extra small. So the sizes are relative to the browser's default font size. In this case, though, the size options are limited. HTML is going to use the color names or codes to designate color values. You have three types of color codes that can be used with CSS. You have your hexadecimal values, which they consist of a 6-digit number code. It's going to correspond to red, green, and blue color values. You can use the red, green, and blue color values, or the HSL, the hue, saturation, and lightness color values. Now, to use a color in the style declaration, you would use the color value as the property value. So we see the example here. Since the style of background color is gray, you would use background color and then the code 808080. And we can look at the different colors here. So you can declare these. If you want to set, say, the background color is set to black, white, red, you can. You can set it to hexadecimal value, the RGB value, or the hue and saturation and lightness value using percentages. All right, HTML elements, they're going to position on the web page as a block or inline content. Okay, block element is going to appear as a block because it starts and ends with a new line. These things such as a main element or paragraph element. Inline elements are going to be displayed without line breaks, so they flow within the same line. Inline content always appear within block elements. So we see a box model. So in this box model, each block element is going to get, such as a header, nav, main, footer. It's going to be displayed in the browser as a box within the content. And this box model describes content boxes on a web page. So we have our content inside. We have a border padding, which is really just white space between the areas. We have our margins of top left, bottom, and right options. So we have the box can have margins, borders, padding. Margins provide passive white spaces between the block elements and between the top or bottom of a web page. Border separates the padding and the margins of the block element. And as I said, padding is a passive white space between the content and the block, border of the block element. Okay, when you create an external style sheet, you're creating a text document and you're going to name it with a .css. You use external style sheets once again to create a style rule that's going to apply to more than one web page in your website. And then you will link it to the HTML file, the web page that it will be linked to, and those rules will be applied to that page. So we've discussed this, that a style rule begins with a selector, which could be an HTML element name, an ID attribute value, or a class attribute. The ID selector, it uses the ID attribute value of an HTML element to select a single element. Class selector selects elements that are included in a certain class attribute, or that include a certain class attribute. A descendant selector, this is used to create a style that applies to an element that's contained within another element. Okay, so we're looking here, once again, the same thing we looked at before, creating a body, setting the background color. So we have our selector, your opening brace. Generally, you want to format these so they're not all on the same line. So you want to go to line 2, do the background color, or start your declaration, put your value, and then put your closing brace on the next line. This is good formatting for your CSS. It makes it easier for you to read rather than trying to have everything on the same line. Now, after you create a CSS file, you need to link it to all the pages that are going to use that style. This link will need to be linked into the head element of each HTML page. Okay, the head element is going to have two attributes. It's going to have the relationship attribute. It's going to use the style sheet value. And then the href attribute that's going to give you the specific file path, or file name of the CSS file. So let's see an example here. So we're going to create the link, and then we're going to say the relationship is it's a style sheet, and then the actual file path is css/styles.css. All right, so when you design a web page, look the way you want. To do this, you can't use HTML alone. You're going to need to use the CSS properties, whether it's inline, external, or internal, or embedded. So you want to design a web page. You're going to use CSS to design the web page layout. A couple of the properties, float property. It allows you to position an element to the left or right of other elements while remaining within its parent element. So is there a valid value? So this would be left, right, inherit, and none. Clear properties is used to remove the float effect. Okay, the values of this would be right, left, and both. You can also use the CSS to align web page content using the text align properties. This is going to apply to block elements. The values that you can use are left, center, right, or just above. We see an example here in the H1 selector that we have the text align declaration and we have the value set to center. You can also set this to center all the elements of the web page using a single style rule. You set the left and right margins to auto, set the width to 80%, which leaves 20% of the page for margins. You can create style rules for structural elements. The header section appears at the top of the web page. So generally you want the formatting of the header section to stand out and attract visitors to your web page. Think of that as the first thing your visitors will see. The nav section should be formatted differently from other structural elements. It should be something that should be prominent on your web page, easy to find. It should be designed so that there's no question that is the navigation. All right, each page also contains different content within the main element. So now you must create different style rules for the content of those pages. A couple other rules. Use a list for navigation links. You can use the CSS list properties to control the appearance of numbered or bulleted lists. Also recommend making responsive images, because those are images that will resize themselves to accommodate the size of the browser window. All right, so this is an example of a style rule for an ID attribute for the value of contact. Okay, so we've got the ID, and this will be designed as in the selector as the # contact. So every time that ID is applied to a selector, the text will be aligned center. So let's look at this example here. So the page content is center aligned in this example. The CSS style has been applied. So looking at this, we can say that this content, this has the ID of content as the, maybe in the paragraph tag or the header tag, or the head tag, I mean, header tag. So we see here that we have the contact set text align center and how it is applied on the web page. Class attributes, they can be applied to more than one div or other HTML elements on a web page. They provide another level of control of the styling and format of specific elements. You can also span elements to group inline together, elements together on a web page. A CSS reset, that's a style rule that's applied to a web page before any other style rule is defined within the sheet. So this is just a reset. It's going to set you back to where you're at with your settings. For example, here is the body, header, nav, footer set to margin 0, padding 0, border 0. Okay, throughout the chapter, it has you working on the Forward Fitness Club website. These are some elements, suggestions that you can use to improve that site. When you're going through this, working on your CSS, I do recommend you placing comments for these, your syntax for placing a comment. This is something that is not read by the browser. Okay, this is just for you to give helpful explanations about what you're doing to that style or where it's being placed. Now, once you validate or create your CSS file, you need to validate this. You have many different types of online validations, just like we validated our HTML files. So you can still go to the W3C. A couple ways here. You can use the by file upload and upload your file, and you'll just upload your CSS file. You can also use the direct input as well. All right, so I'm going to bring over our assignment this week. First of all, I want to go into Blackboard. And in your Chapter 4 folder, this is something that we'll be doing each week. I have a Chapter 4 starting files. Okay, you will need to come in and download these files. These are the files that you will be starting with in your assignment. Okay, these are the solution files for Chapter 3. You will just be using them. Chapter 4, I'm going to, right now I'm just going to save these on my desktop. And I want to make sure I extract these. Click extract. And you'll see inside of this, I'll have 4 HTML files. And in my image folder, I'll have these 3 images. Okay, these are things I will be using in the chapter. Also on MindTap, in our reading, you'll see that you have 30 activities here. Okay, so these are not graded. These are practice material. I do recommend you do this. So when you click on these will be found inside of your text. When you go through your chapter, make sure that you read these Q&As and these step-by-step assignments. This is not stuff that you will be turning in, but it is things that will help you as you work through your assignment. So when we come to these, the floating page content, where it says the try it, practice code, do these. These are part of your reading. This is part of your assignment for the reading. Like I said, it's not graded, but it does show you the tasks that you will need to complete in your assignment and how to complete them. So if I wanted to change this, I can. These are kind of similar to your actual labs. As far as the layout, as far as you have the share button, the reset as well. So I have you, in this case, it's telling you what to do. So you need to apply the clear position, which is either left, right, bottom, or none. Both or none, I'm sorry. So you will go in and apply that into this area. And these are found throughout your chapter. So these will help you as you're working through and reading your assignment. Be sure to complete those. And you can see you have quite a few of them. They're not very time consuming. You do have some practice that you have. You have your assignment for your discussion. So let's take a look at your actual assignment this week. So your chapter 4 in the lab, you're still working with the Strike Accord website. Okay, so you still have to go in. Each week you're going to create these images folders and your music folders, and bring in your assignments, your web pages from last week. So once again, I'm going to have to go up to the folder actions. I'll click new file. In this case, I'm going to upload the assignments. Make sure that you put them in the correct folder, unlike what I just did. I'm going to delete this. So in here, I'm going to create a music directory. Actually, I'm going to click on the correct thing and create a music. And inside of my music, I'm going to create another directory named images. So inside of my music, I'm going to now upload my actual files. And these files will be provided to you and now I'm going to go into my images folder and make sure I upload the files from my images. Okay, so I have all of them uploaded. Once again, I'm going to open up a new terminal. I'm going to paste my information in here and then make sure that my music note has been moved. And then I'm going to go through the rest of the steps of creating a new folder, naming it CSS. I'm linking these to the pages. I'm going to create a cascading style sheet, put this information in. So it's going to give you the information that you're going to be applying to the style sheet. You'll just need to make sure you create the style sheet and then update the information down in the other steps. Now this link, it tells you where to link the file. So we're going to put these after the meta element in all of our HTML files. So we're going to make sure that we go in and simply copy and paste this link into each one of our files. And then once we do this, this may not pass since I haven't created. Okay, it did pass. I've now linked my web pages to that CSS file. So be sure to create your chapter 4. Create your CSS in chapter 4. Download your files. Make sure you upload those. And if you have any questions, feel free to send me a message.